If you already know HTML but your website still looks plain, boring or unfinished, this video is exactly what you need. HTML gives structure to a website, but CSS is what makes it look professional. In this video, you will learn what CSS is, how CSS works with HTML, how to write your first real CSS, and how CSS transforms a basic page into a mini portfolio. No frameworks, no confusion, just clean fundamentals. So let's begin. What is CSS? CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. Think of HTML as a structure of a house, walls, doors, or windows. CSS is like paint, furniture, lighting, and layout. Without CSS, every website would look like this. CSS controls colors, font, spacing, layout, and visual hierarchy. How CSS works? CSS works using rules. Every CSS rule has three parts: a selector, a property, and a value. Let's look at the example. Here, H1 is the selector, color is the property, and blue is the value. This means that select all H1 elements and make them color blue. So let me save this and load this in my browser. So as you can see that I have the heading H1 just right here, and that has been colored as blue. So if I create more H1, let's say, you'll notice that all the H1 will be colored as blue. Okay, that's why I said what it does is it will select all the H1 element and make them color blue. Alright, so that's the heart of CSS. Three ways to use CSS. Inline CSS. The first way is inline CSS. Now this is how it works. Now as the name suggests, inline CSS is written inside your HTML element. So let's write it right now. Style, I'll add the property and the value. Now let me save this file and refresh my page. There you go. It works perfectly fine. As you can see that inline CSS, what we did was we created the styling color red inside the H1 element, and that's what it's visually showing in my browser. Now what's the purpose of inline CSS? Inline CSS is used for a quick fix or one-off styling. If you want to apply a very specific override, that's when you use inline CSS, and it's good for testing purposes. It's not reusable, and as you can see, it mixes your HTML and CSS together. So it's not very wise for you to use inline CSS on your code. Like I said, the main purpose is for testing. Second, internal CSS. Now let me show you how internal CSS works. What you need to do is you need to create a style after your head but before the body. There's an opening of a style and a closing of a style. And right here, I'll just go ahead and add the color for H1 element. Let's say green. Save. Now you'll notice that just like we discussed earlier, we have the selector, we have the property, and we have the value as well. Now what it will do is when I save this file and load it in my browser, you'll notice that all the H1 element will be colored green, and it's quite useful. Now as you can see, it's better but still limited for real projects. That's where external CSS comes in place. Let me show you what external CSS is. Third, external CSS. Now external CSS is designed for real maintainable websites. Let me show you how it's created. First, what you need to do is you need to go and create a file. Let's say I'll name my file as style.css. Now this is where all your CSS will be written down. Now after I created my CSS file, what I'll do is inside the head after the title, I'm going to go ahead and create a link, and then you can select the third option right here and hit enter. And that way it will create a relation of style sheet and the reference hyperlink of your style.css. If you want to change your name, you need to make sure that your name matches with the href value over here. Okay, now let me save this file. Now all the styles that we add over here, it's going to affect this HTML page. Now if you have multiple HTML pages, you can just create a link and it's going to be linked together. Quite simple and powerful. As you can see that I've created a link and I've created a style page file. Now what I'll do is I'll type in h1 and color as blue. Okay, I'll save this and I'll go to my HTML file and go live. As you can see that all my h1 has been colored blue, and that's external CSS, and it's quite useful and quite powerful because this keeps your code clean. All your HTML is separated and all your CSS is separated over here, and this is how real websites are built, using an external CSS. Inline CSS for testing purpose, internal CSS for mini project or one single page projects, and for big projects you use external CSS. CSS selectors. Selectors decides what needs to be styled. First is element selector. Now we call the element, let's say the P element that we have in our HTML code. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and call the paragraph element and color as, let's say, red. I'll save this. I'll go ahead and refresh my web page. It styles all the paragraphs in your HTML pages. Now there's another kind which is called class selector, and it's really useful and really important. Let me show you an example of a class selector. So in order to use a class selector, you need to make some changes in your HTML. So let me create a class right here and add the name card text. Okay, and the same class I'm going to create right here as well. Okay, and now let me go to my style.css and call this card text. Now whenever you call a class, you need to make sure that you use a dot notation. Now let me just go ahead and add the background color as, let's say, gray, and save. Now after I save this file, you can notice that the paragraphs in my browser has been changed to a background color of gray, and the background color has been affected in the paragraphs wherever I have added the class as card text. Classes are reusable and you'll use this most of the time. Third, ID selector. Now ID selector is used whenever you have a unique element. Let me create an ID for the header right here. Main title. Okay. And now I'll just go ahead and call the ID. Whenever you're calling an ID, you need to make sure that you use the hash before you call the ID. Main title. Okay. And then I will use font size as, let's say, 32 pixel and color as, let's say, red. Now as you can see, the entire header has been changed. Now inside the header I have h1 and paragraph, and even they are affected. Now as you can see that ID should be unique. The rule of thumb is classes are used for styling and ID for unique element or JavaScript. Now there's something very important that I'm going to cover right now. Instead of using these classes or ID, why don't we style element every time? Now there's a limitation when it comes to styling element always. When you style an element directly, you are styling every instance of that element. Now let us see again, color red. You'll notice that all the instances of the P element that you have in your HTML are going to be affected. But in the real website, it doesn't work like that, because your paragraph can be a footer, your paragraph can also be a card, and they all should not look the same. This is exactly why we use classes. Classes let you style elements based on their role or purpose, not just their type. Now as you can see that in both of this section, I added the class of card text. So when I call card text, you'll notice that both the paragraphs are going to be affected. All these other paragraphs that we have in header and footer, they are not going to be affected unless I add them under the class. And that's why we have the same element but different role and different style. Now let me create a class over here for, let's say, footer text. You'll notice that when I call the footer text right here, you'll notice that all of them are using P element, but it has different classes and different purpose. Now for this, they have a card text. That's why they are colored same and has the same background color. But this serves a different purpose, which is a footer text. Therefore, I called footer text differently and changed the color as red. Now classes gives you control and reusability. That's why classes are used for styling in real projects. Why ID exists? ID exists for a different reason. An ID is used to identify one unique element. Let me create an ID for the header Now what it will do is, there's only one main header. An ID is useful when an element is unique or JavaScript needs to target an element. And we are going to learn about JavaScript as well later in the course. But for now, you need to remember that ID is used in order to create a unique element. So let me call an ID using a hash sign, main header, and give the styling as, let's say. Now as you can see that everything that I have under this unique element ID main header, that is h1 and paragraph, has been styled as 32 pixel font size and color blue. Mini portfolio demo. Let's build a very small portfolio page using only what we have learned today. And without the style, as you can see, this is how my HTML looks like. It's quite plain, just a structure. Now let me go ahead and add my CSS file over here. Now watch what happens when CSS comes in. I'll save this file and there you go, my entire web page is changed. Now as you can see that it's the same HTML but a completely different experience. And this is the power of CSS. So far we have used the basic CSS that we learned today. But down this course you are going to learn more advanced CSS and your website is going to look more amazing. So make sure to stick till the end of this course, as this is just the first chapter and the foundation of CSS. Later in the CSS you are going to learn about grid, flexbox and all these different components that we have in CSS. CSS Comments. Now before we continue, I want to show you a professional habit that you should start right now. Use comments in your CSS to divide the section. As you can see that this is my main footer, so make sure to use comment. Now in order to add the comment, you need to select the entire line and then Ctrl/. There you go, you have a comment. Now the same comment you can use even in your CSS as well. If in case you want to just try an experiment and remove the text align, I can use command Ctrl// and save this file. Now as you can see, this will skip this particular line. Now I can go back and revert it back by using Ctrl// again. Save this. Now comments are ignored by the browser. They are only for humans to understand. And as your CSS grows, comments keeps your file readable. Common beginner mistakes. Mistake 1. CSS file not linked. Now as you can see that I have my link over here and I have my style right here. Everything works perfectly, but still my CSS is not loading. That is because I need to check my file name as well. So as you can see over here, it's style.css and right here it's styles.css. So make sure to check your file name, spelling and path whenever you are linking it with your style page. Mistake 2. Class name mismatched. CSS is case sensitive, so your card with a capital C and card with a small c are not the same. As you can see that in my HTML I have card text as capital C, so I need to make sure that I change them even in my style page as well. Now when I save this file, you can see that the CSS is working right now for my card text. Mistake 3. Forgetting dot or hash. So in here, if you forget to use dot notation and instead use card text this way, it's not going to work, because whenever you are using a class you use a dot notation and whenever you are using an ID you use a hash notation. So if you forget to use hash or dot notation, your CSS is not going to work. Mistake 4. Forgetting to save. Now let's say I make some changes over here and add the font size as 24 pixel. Now whenever you make any changes in your HTML code or CSS code, you'll notice that there will be a white circular dot right here in your file name. This is there to let the user know that the file has not been saved. So when I Ctrl+S and save the file, the changes are going to be reflected and this white dot is going to be removed. So always save the file after you make any changes in your CSS or HTML. Awesome work guys! Now that you have understood the basics of CSS, the next topic is the most important concept in CSS. In the next video, we'll understand the concept of CSS box model. Now if this video helped you learn something new, make sure to hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you next week. Thank you.